All right. Welcome everyone to our recreational properties information session. This is part whatever number of a bunch of different series that we've done on a whole bunch of things in terms of real estate and financing. And as always, we are joined today by our good friend, Nick Lequier, the principal broker at Mortgage Wellness. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, Courtney, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We're so excited. And of course, Peggy Hill is here, our girl boss extraordinaire over at the Peggy Hill team. And then again, a very extra special guest, Joanne Burlington, who is a sales representative with the Peggy Hill team. And she is amazing because she specializes in cottage properties. So she is your girl if you have questions about cottage properties. So we are streaming live here on Facebook. If you have questions, just go with a little housekeeping. You can actually post them in the chat. We're looking at questions, we're checking it out. And if you have questions about things that come up, post them there and we'll be sure to try and answer them as much as we can. If you're on Zoom here with us, post in there. We are all good. We're gonna go over lots of things. We're gonna talk about the cottage market, the recreational properties market, some statistics, definitely what you need to know about cottage financing, because it's a little bit different than traditional financing, some featured listings, and then of course, question and answer. So first and foremost, I think, Nick, unless you've got anything for us, we're going to go with Peggy and we're going to talk about some market stats. I think specifically some waterfront stuff and a little bit more about that. So Peggy, if you want to share your screen with us, okay, I will let you take it away.
I will share my screen. Okay, can you see me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So what I have here, folks, is some market stats for Kawartha Lakes, Georgian Bay, Huntsville, and Bracebridge. I've picked waterfront, so these are all waterfront. And I think the coolest part of this, like, look at that big jump.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to see tonight, Peggy. I was like, I can't wait to see that giant spike. And that spike was pandemic started. Oh my gosh, on board. Let's go buy a cottage, right?
Yep, that was COVID. So coming out of COVID, nobody could travel last summer. Things just went haywire. So Georgian Bay obviously was the luckiest one of them all. They had, let's see here. So we have the average. Okay, so sales prices. Look at them. They peaked last November. Was the peak, and it was 1,412,000 is the median price. Let me see the average price. So the average price for Georgian Bay waterfront was 1,412,000.
Crazy.
Nobody else.
Crazy.
Absolutely no one else touches them. But as you can see, everybody kind of peaked last year. And which it shocks me because it peaked November of 2020. Like, nobody typically buys waterfront in November, but this will tell you, we were all bored out of our minds thinking, how long is this going to go on? I'll never be able to travel again. I'm buying a cottage.
And let's not forget too, Peggy, like probably half of those cottages that people closed on in November or purchased in November, for example, were like just 2 or 3 seasons too, right? Like, you know, they bought them in November. They paid for them all winter and couldn't even access them again until May 24, right?
I think the one thing that happened this year that was a little bit of a phenomenon, or in 2020, people couldn't travel. So then they started renting cottages here. And so what happened when you rent a cottage here, you see what people are getting for their cottages. And all of a sudden, people were like, I'm buying one of those because if I can get that kind of money, Joe will speak to this, my Joanne Burlington cottage specialist extraordinaire, she will speak to the kind of rent people are getting, but it's mind-blowing. But that's why you see what you see, because you would never have normally seen people buying waterfront in November. I mean, the market after Labor Day kind of shuts down, Thanksgiving, hard stop. Am I wrong, Joe?
It's incredible. It's been straight across the board, even with rentals. So we're even seeing some of the winter rentals it's incredible the amounts that people are paying for winter rentals. So for snowmobiling and, you know, the ATV season even, they're renting year round. I would say when COVID hit, on an average rental, you would see, I would say on a higher end rental, you would see something like maybe $6,000. I have a good friend who rents hers, you know, it was $6,000 prior to COVID and usually capturing $10,000 a week. And so you can see that even though the prices
A week.
a week, yeah. And now
Yeah.
that's nice turnkey cottage. It's in Bala, which is a nice, beautiful town. But I mean, that's, you know, that's what people are getting. So our team just sold that cottage actually. And, you know, we sold it, I think it was 2.2, I believe. But that tells you sort of that price range for that one. But that's a rent that they're capturing. And then in the down times, they probably would be at the rent that they were capturing before COVID. So that, you know, that 6,000 range a week still in lower seasons. So it's there's definitely some money to be made in renting cottages for sure.
Yeah, and I've heard that the week between Christmas and New Year's, like overlapping Christmas and New Year's, is likely the highest amount of rent that you'll receive from a cottage rental all year, right?
Absolutely.
Crazy. Yeah. I mean, it's not even in high season. There's no docks out or anything, right?
No, there's not. So people just like to get away and, you know, just like a lot of people when they like to travel and go away at Christmas break with their families again. So some of those peak times when you look at the rental calendar will be, you know, generally July and August would be the peak seasons. But, you know, you're seeing things that, you know, family day week, that might be more of a peak week now. Christmas would be a peak week now. Thanksgiving even might not capture as much as the summer, but right now, I mean, there's literally zero inventory in the rentals as well. There's people constantly posting, looking desperately for rent as well. So
Can I ask you a question, Joe?
yes.
So when I look at this chart and it has the new listings, and so for May 2021, Kawartha Lakes had 10 new listings. Georgian Bay only had 4 new listings. Huntsville 27 and Bracebridge 28. Is that typical for waterfront? Like, is there just nothing out there?
Out there, it's really that's why. So what we're experiencing here in our market, it's you know, I find it's even more crazy in cottage country. So you know, the bidding that's going on. So you know, we might see 200,000 to 300,000 over the asking price up there, depending on the price point. You know, obviously the higher up it is, it's incredible to me that even the really high end stuff is getting all of these, you know, multiple offers, but we're seeing a lot of people. I know that little school in Bala, you know, this year before, you know, we said the peak happened kind of in that November, but at the beginning of the school year, they had 90 new registrants for that wee school. So it goes to show you how many people now are moving to their cottages and making them their year-round homes just to, you know, I mean, it on top of the rental. So there's going on in cottage, lots of change going on for sure.
Well, and it kind of makes sense because, I mean, if you have a second property right now, cashing out on your primary residence really isn't, you don't have much to lose. If you're not working in an office, you can work from home. But the other thing that I wanted to show you just for fun, because I think I'm trying to remember, I think it was Jeff that showed me. Okay,
Yeah,
guys,
I just saw that.
look at this. $82,000 a week. Fully booked.
So
Don't forget.
that's, yeah.
Fully
Oh,
booked.
wow.
Fully
Yep.
booked. Luxury on Joe, let's see, $55,000 a week. Okay, I'm looking at the super elite right now, but I mean,
Okay, but you know what? So I saw this. If you look over, just go back one.
yeah. To what?
Go back a page to where you just were there.
Yeah.
Yeah, super elite. Yeah.
Okay.
So the one on the right-hand side at the top,
Yeah.
that's in Innisfil.
What?
Yeah, that's at the tip of Crescent Harbor, I'm pretty sure.
Oh my God, $75,000.
So that's not Lake Joe, that's not Lake Rosso, that's not Lake Muskoka. That's
Right. It's in Innisfil. You're right.
Yeah. So that's, you know, that private road. One of my staff lives down there, Peggy. That's at the end of that road.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, so Mapleview all the way down to the end. You're
That's crazy.
10 minutes from Yonge and Big Day Point there.
$75,000 a week. Okay, but let's just look at something normal, because that's just crazy. That's insane. So let's look at boutique.
Yeah, which is nice stuff, right? Yeah.
$16,000 a week,
Yeah.
$12,000 a week, $11,500 a week.
That's
Yeah.
going to depend on the big water versus the smaller water too. So you can get like a traditional cottage on one of the smaller lakes that you might capture about 6,000 a week for. And then as soon as that lake increases, if you were to put that same cottage on Muskoka, Joe, Ross, one of the big three, you're capturing then.
This home away one is on Lake Rosso.
Pardon me?
That one that says home away, that one's on Lake Rosso. It's Lake Rosso.
Yes. So you get
$11,500. And that's what Joe taught me. She said the bigger the water, the more money.
Yeah. And even like Georgian Bay, for example, like those big high prices. I've been seeing like, the individual cottage on an island now, like those are starting to pop up on the cottage rental sites. And it's like, it's stuff like bring your own boat, right? Like these are people that own boats, that even trailer boats. They're bringing their own boat because, they're used to sort of boating Georgian Bay, but they bring their own boat, they have a getaway. It's a whole new experience. And those cottages even are attracting major rent. Look at it right there. Yeah, there's a great example. That's a full island cottage. Bring your own boat.
That's really cool though. That is really cool. Like to be on an island.
So, interesting mortgage guy fact, if there is one, but most banks don't actually like a single cottage on an island, opposed to like a cottage on an island of 30 or 40 cottages. Can you guess why, Peggy?
Well, no.
Because if there's a tragedy on the island, right?
That's where my head went, but I didn't want to be a weirdo and say that.
Well, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking like, how do I get help? But the bank's thinking like, you've seen not so much this one, but that little rock in the middle of like Georgian Bay.
Yeah.
If that gets swallowed up by the lake, the water's high, the cottage is underwater, and there's a risk to the property. Yeah, well, there's one person that affects, right? And that person could say, the heck with this and walk away or whatever. If it's an island of say 30 or 40 cottages, there's many more people that are invested into the remedy to that situation, right? Like, let's all chip in and build a break wall. Let's do something about the high water, those sort of things, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay,
now, when
great.
Georgian Bay there, one interesting fact that I find about that is that majority of them are boat access. So when you look at those prices shoot up the way that they have, so generally it's because of the affordability, because they are island cottages. But now, it has completely shot right up, and people are taking advantage of it, whether it's because that's what they can get their hands on, and whether it's boat access or not, the value is still incredible. Like it's amazing. Yeah.
So I was on mute before and I was doing all of this, but it's my job to rein you all in. That's what this
I saw it.
I was completely muted.
Yeah, I saw it. So we'll move along here because there's lots more to chat about.
So much.
And yeah. And I think it's my turn, right, Courtney?
Yep.
It is, yes. So Nick is going to chat with us about everything you need to know about cottage financing before we go into some really cool properties, because cottage financing is a little bit different than traditional financing. So there's a lot to know before going out and, finding your dream cottage and then realizing maybe not. So Nick, take it away.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I love presenting on financing cottages because there's so many myths to bust. And most people don't really know what's happening in the cottage market most of the time. And Joanne, I think you'll agree with this, but really, that's all changed this year. Everybody knows that the cottage market is nuts, right? Before all of this, and to sort of chat about your market stats there, you remember back in 2019, a cottage like this would be listed forever, probably multiple seasons. There was cottages that stayed on the market for 3 seasons, 4 seasons, 5 seasons, never sold. like never sold, hundreds of showing. The days on market were in the hundreds. Maybe one offer finally, home inspection, multiple conditions, 20% over asking. The same cottage 1 year later, as you guys were mentioning, now listed for 1 day, and there's no conditions, and there's no home inspection, and there's no appraisal. And when that deal lands on our desk over at Mortgage Wellness looking for financing, we're like, hey, you're missing the key 5 things that we need you to look for here. And there's some really, really critical things to keep in mind when looking for a cottage. So I'm going to go over those, okay? But some of the myths, okay? So let's start with first things first. Number 1, islands, no problem. We finance islands every day, every week, every year, no problem. You can absolutely finance a cottage on an island. It's no problem at all. We do 100 of these a year. It's no problem. There are some key criteria to go with it. So I'll mention those in a moment. Remote locations, no problem. Okay, so we get questions about French River. We get questions about north of Sudbury. We get I have to take my boat 30 minutes from the marina to the island. No problem at all. It's about good, clean, marketable real estate. Okay, when you get there, if the cottage is great, it's been maintained. Joanne's husband has been painting it, and Joanne's been keeping it nice and clean inside or outside, and the docks are in good shape. That's what they're looking for. Okay, and on that good quality real estate, interest rates are typically not different than just financing a home. So when I get to the financing part of this, I'm going to ask you guys what interest rate you think I used to prepare this, and it's going to blow you away. The rates are really, really good for these programs. Lake intake. This is one of the categories where people always think an issue exists, okay? But lake intake is totally financeable. It's no problem at all. I'm going to show you how that sort of fits into the criteria, okay? There has to be running water in the house. It has to be pouring out of the taps. There has to be a shower and a bathroom and a kitchen and running water, but the lake water is totally fine. Does not need to be drinkable, okay? And for that same reason, 2 and 3 season cottages, no problem, right? These are specific cottage financing programs. Now, there are some things to go with it as well, and those are the things that I'm going to cover right now, okay? The number 1 most important thing that cottage shoppers and cottage buyers and cottage dreamers should take away from this presentation, number 1 thing, septic systems are key. Banks want to see septic systems, no compost toilets, no holding tanks, no outhouses. If you want the best financing possible, of course, there's exceptions to every rule, right? We get these things done sometimes. But if you want to be able to go to virtually every lender and have lenders fighting over your mortgage to get the best deal possible, septic system is key. All right. So reach out to a good realtor like Joanne, who will show you the areas where septic systems are probably very rare. So Joanne, you're still there, I think, with us. And you'll agree, those really rocky areas, Port Severn and Honey Harbor and Parry Sound, for example, septic systems are more rare because you'd have to blast into the rock to get the septic system in. But Joanne, the cottages that you're seeing, generally speaking, the good ones have septic systems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, great.
Now too that can sit above grade. So we're seeing a lot of septics in a lot of them, most of them.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so anybody that's shopping for a cottage or thinking about shopping for a cottage, septic system, okay? Keep that in mind. The septic system is key, okay? Now, number 2, multiple structures on one property will absolutely complicate your file, okay? So we're not talking about bunkies. You can add a bunkie for like $5,000 to $10,000. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like the main cottage and 6 cabins, the main cottage and 2 cabins, or 2 full cottages on one property. I get the calls every week, like family retreat. And the call comes in and it's like, hey, Nick, really excited to chat with you about this property. My name's Courtney, and me and my friend Joanne, we want to buy this property because it has 2 cottages and we can go up there and our kids can all run and mingle together. It's gonna be fabulous. Banks want one property. They want highly marketable real estate, okay?
Oh, why, Nick? Why? I don't understand that.
So, the bank...
More not better.
No, more's not better in that circumstance. Why? I know, right? So there's going to be a lot of whys. We're going to talk about Airbnb in a moment as well, and I'll tell you why banks don't like it. But banks are always erring on the side of caution. every single mortgage application that they review, they look at with a little bit of a, a lens that says, if so-and-so were to default on this home, on this mortgage, and we had to take it back, how fast can we sell the home? How fast can we get our money back? Because I'll tell you, Scotiabank and RBC and TD, it doesn't matter who the bank is, there's not a lender in Canada that wants to own a single piece of real estate. They want to lend money on it, and they want to lend it to good borrowers. And if the good borrower falls on hard times, they want to know that they have an asset that they can sell like that. And 2 cottages on one piece of property is not as marketable, right? Like, I mean, Joanne, I mean, that's a pretty easy question for you to answer, I'm sure. But like, a good clean cottage, one cottage on one piece of land will sell faster than the neighboring cottage that have 2 big cottages on one piece of land, right? It markets to a wider audience, right? Yeah, so that's why. But multiple structures will absolutely complicate your deal. Bunkies and boathouses are the exception. Okay, so you can have a boathouse, you can have a bunkie, but the main cottage and 6 cabins, the main cottage and 2 cabins, or 2 full cottages will be difficult to finance for sure. So you want one clean, good property, like what we just saw. The examples that Peggy showed earlier on the cottage rental site. All of those are fabulous examples of great real estate. We're going to show you some other examples at the end of this as well. Number 3, I know you guys are going to hate this one, right? Every realtor hates it when I mention this. What? Disclosing your intent to rent the property seasonally will absolutely limit your financing options, okay? So disclosing your intent to rent the property seasonally, Airbnb, will limit your financing options, okay? So what's that?
I'm not going to tell you.
So what we want to do is we want to go into it assuming that Courtney can qualify for the cottage with no rental income whatsoever, that Joanne can purchase it as a second home, as a cottage, second to her house, using no rental income at all. Lenders do not want to rely on Airbnb income or rental income to qualify a cottage. And the answer to this is very simple. I have a whole slide on it, so we're going to cover it in a little bit. But basically, in summary, Airbnb is up in the air right now. We don't know which municipalities are going to allow it or take it away, or if it's going to be a provincial mandate, or it will remain a municipal bylaw. But if the bank uses Airbnb rental income to qualify Peggy's ability to buy a cottage, and the municipality shuts it down, all of a sudden, all of the income that we use to help her qualify for it is gone. And then the bank's concern is, of course, can they continue paying for the cottage? So we want to qualify someone for a cottage using just their income, factoring in their primary residence, and under the premise that it'll just be a cottage, right?
Yeah.
We want to avoid rental pools, leased land, cooperatives, and fractional ownerships. Joanne, you don't have to unmute, but just nod with me if you get the call saying, I just found one for 100,000. It's got to be too good to be true, right? And we're like, yes, it's too good to be true. So when you see on MLS, and I wish I had time to share my screen, but if you see on MLS, it says, 123 Main Street, Port Carling, and it's $100,000, chances are it's fractional ownership, it's a timeshare, it's leased land, it's cooperative, or it's a rental pool, okay? And we absolutely finance those every day, but what we do is we refinance someone's home, we get them a really low rate line of credit on their home, and they just pay cash for it, right? But you can't finance those things. What we're looking for is good, clean real estate, like what Peggy was showing earlier and what I'm going to show you later in the presentation.
One question, Nick.
Yeah.
Is the big push right now is fractional ownership? Is that a problem to finance? I'm going to guess.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, the good news is, Peggy, with the low price of those fractional ownerships, we usually we arrange a home equity line of credit on, a buyer's primary residence, and then they just pay cash for the fractional ownership. I usually find that those are like, around $100,000 for the fractional ownership, piece to it, to buy into it. So that's an affordable amount. And it works really well for a lot of families. I mean, you get a couple weeks a year sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. So really, when we're looking at cottage financing, there's 2 buckets. There's 5% down and there's 10% down. So 5% down is a house on a lake. Okay. So if it looks like a house on a lake, 5% down is absolutely achievable. Now, this is a myth that I bust every day. People think that you need 20% down or 35% down or 50% down to purchase a cottage. And we're all here to tell you that's not the case. I mean, if you have a good house on a lake, I'm going to show you a couple examples, 5% down is totally achievable. And even better, this is my favorite one, a cabin on an island, 10% down. Okay, so this is a house on a lake. This is a cabin on an island. In both circumstances, it's a very reasonable down payment. Okay, so house on a lake, 5% down. This is my favorite one, cabin on an island. Okay, it doesn't have to be winterized. You can travel there by boat. Seasonal access is no problem, and no permanent heat source is required. Okay, so some people may say, I'm 55 years old. I don't want to put 5% down on something. But what I actually find, and Courtney, you and I have chatted about this before, but buyers want to leave their house, and their cottage. Like, I want a cottage, but I don't really want to disrupt my home plans, right? And you and I have chatted about this in our own circumstances before, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I want my house to remain my house, but Nick, my husband and I have saved up some money and we'd like to buy a cottage. And instead of me entering the conversation and saying, okay, well, let's refinance your house. Let's take $100,000 out. Let's put it on the cottage. These programs allow us to do these sort of things with 5% down and 10% down. So again, 5% down is a house on a lake, and I'll show you some examples. 10% down, look at this. Doesn't have to be winterized, boat access only, seasonal access, no heat source. It's beautiful. And again, for that 5% down option, those are, they're more expensive. And we're going to show you an option. Actually, the option that we're using tonight is $599,000. It's a house, cottage, I should say. Joanne said to me, she said, this is great value. It's in Bracebridge. I mean, you get a Bracebridge address for under $600,000 with water. It's amazing. Now, the $599 listing is riverfront, but I'm going to show you how affordable it can be. Now, that house has a foundation. It has a kitchen, a 3-piece bath, a bedroom, and a common area. It has year-round access. It's winterized, and it's good quality construction with drinkable water. Okay, so if anybody wants more information on this, I can definitely send it to you, but here's the criteria for 5% down. Okay, it's a house on a lake, good construction, drinkable water with a foundation. Does that make sense, Peggy?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, all right, so this is my favorite. I mean, you've heard me talk about this 100 times, I'm sure, Peggy, because it is literally one of my favorite financing products. This is the cabin on an island. Okay, so in our world, they call it type A and type B. Type B is really where the magic happens. No permanent heat sources required, wood stove, fireplace, stove, or heat blower. Okay, let me read that to you again. You're reading that correctly. Look at a stove for a heat source.
Crazy.
Isn't it?
With
Floating,
only 10% down.
10% down payment. Now, as Joanne knows, Joanne and I have talked about this before, these cabins on an island, like in Georgian Bay, they used to be $250,000, right? Like, I mean, they were crazy affordable. So we had many people buy these with like $25,000 down, $30,000 down, and they're super affordable, like super affordable. So boat access, the water source does not need to be drinkable, and there does not need to be a foundation. So, you've seen piers and blocks. What's that, Peggy?
That one shocked me.
I'm telling you, this is the caramel secret. This is the best one. So no permanent heat source. Okay. It says that you can have a stove as a heat source. Foundation doesn't need to exist. You can have piers, blocks, pillars, seasonal road access, no problem, or boat access. The water source does not need to be drinkable. There has to be running water in the home, but it does not need to be drinkable. And boat access only is acceptable.
I know. I was going to say the same thing, Court.
Okay, how come
buy a house?
How come every time then, whenever I have a rural property, whether it's on waterfront or not, but most waterfront, especially up in Simcoe County, are all on wells, I always need a 0.0 water rating for
It's a great question.
the mortgage person.
That's a great question. Great question. Okay. The big difference here is this has to be a cottage for this requirement. So if someone's living in the home year round,
So
then
like
the
a
water has to be
primary,
drinkable.
so a primary residence water has to be drinkable. If it's
You
a
got it.
secondary actual recreational property, you can get away with undrinkable water.
You got it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as long as it's a second home cottage, you're good to go.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And Joanne, are you able to unmute for a sec? I mean, is it safe to say that most of the cottages that you see don't have a foundation these days, right? They're like the ones on the islands.
No, they're
Yeah.
usually on, or yeah, or just
Perfect. Awesome. So very, very common property characteristics to not have a foundation. It's on piers or it's on blocks. Now, in this circumstance, again, it's 10% down. This is the best cottage financing program available, hands down. Okay, so this is 5% down. That's a house on a lake, 10% down, cabin on an island. Okay, and this program is widely available. We do this all the time.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so let's just go over that. I'll break that down for you, okay? If the house looks like a house, if the property looks like a house, 5% down. If the property looks like a cabin, 10% down. That's like my go-to. I'm like, okay, you found a cottage, tell me about it. Well, it's a little pan-abode log home, and it's on an island, and people usually scrunch up their face and they're like, the water, you can't drink the water. I'm like, it's okay, it's no problem, right? No foundation is okay. Running water is a must. Drinkable water is not a must. But again, the number one takeaway from this presentation is if you're looking for the best possible financing on a cottage, make sure it has a septic system and running water. For sure, okay? No outhouses, no holding tanks. They are possible, but it's not going to make it easy, okay? Now, for island properties, mortgage insurance, so CMHC, Genworth insurance, always paid. Like, I mean, we can sometimes get away with it if somebody has a really hefty down payment, say like 35% down, okay? But generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, when we finance a cottage, it's 5% down or 10% down. So, Joanne and her husband will want to leave their financing on their house to be their financing on their house. And then their cottage is totally separate. Hey, Nick, we've had a good year. We put away some money. We have about $50,000 for a cottage. I'm like, great, let's, this is what to look for. Let's do this. No foundation is okay. Islands are okay. Running water is a must. Septic systems are a must. Okay. So again, the property looks like a house. You can drive to it. It has a foundation, drinkable water, 5% down. And if it's a cabin on an island, 10% down. All right. So let's talk Airbnb. You can all unmute for it. We're going to chat about it. Okay, so Airbnb, we chatted about. We know why banks don't like it because I mentioned it to you. Really, more than anything, Courtney, you and I have talked about this 100 times, I think, right? But you can't use the rental income from it. Banks don't know how to treat it. And, where I live in Oro-Medonte, I know for a fact, like it's not allowed in Horseshoe Valley. If you post your house for rent on Airbnb, the township will walk up your driveway with your Airbnb listing and ask you what you're doing.
The neighborhood watch will like bring your Airbnb listing to the township and say, no.
Absolutely.
In my area, for sure.
Yeah, and if you think NIMBYs exist in like Oro-Medonte, wait until you get into those really exclusive cottage communities, right? Rosso, Muskoka, Port Carling, Bala. Like, I mean, we all think it's great. We all want to rent our cottage. We all want to achieve that really great rental income. You cannot use it to qualify for the cottage, like from an income perspective. You don't want it anywhere near the listing. I mean, we had total tragedy with a listing where our client bought the property, and in the purchase agreement, they assumed the seller's Airbnb account and their superhost status and remaining bookings for the year and everything. Totally like was completely detrimental to our deal because banks don't want anything to do with it, right? Anything that's new, banks don't want anything to do with it. It takes a long time for banks to get on to something, right? I mean, Friday Harbor, for example, we're actually gonna do a whole separate presentation on Friday Harbor. I'm super excited about it. Peggy, I know you love Friday Harbor.
Love,
You would spend every waking minute in Friday Harbor if you could.
love.
So we'll do a whole other seminar on Friday Harbor, but Friday Harbor, you can now live there year round, right?
Yes, but you know what, Nick?
Yeah.
I don't really blame the banks. Usually I don't side with the banks. Well, I never side with the banks, but I don't blame them in the Airbnb. And I'll tell you why. It's like municipalities change their opinions on this every other week. And like every municipality has a different outlook on it. So, I mean, it's understandable why they wouldn't consider it because they keep changing their minds.
Yeah, and I had a really intelligent client who was professionally and productively challenging me on the topic and said, why could you use rental income from a long-term tenant and not a short-term tenant, knowing that the short-term tenant's going to pay me more than the long-term tenant? And we had a really great productive conversation about it, but really where it ended, Peggy, is this: the long-term tenant is governed by Ontario law. It's the Residential Tenancies Act.
100%.
Whereas Airbnb is
not.
municipal and it changes. I mean, there's even overlapping boundaries, meaning there's a municipality that allows it and then a neighborhood association that doesn't allow it.
100%.
So, Muskoka may allow it, but the Cottage Association of any specific town, lake, or street may not allow it. So the long-term tenancies are governed by the province and the Residential Tenancies Act, and Airbnb is just kind of the Wild West right now. Like, nobody knows if it's going to be allowed or not. And frankly, even if it's not allowed in a municipality, it's still being done, right? People are breaking the rules on it, right?
Yep.
So that's Airbnb in a nutshell. I imagine that this is going to sort of strike up some questions. So if you have any questions, just type them in the chat box and we'll answer them. Usually the Airbnb slide that I do here, if we're doing this live, is like probably half of the presentation because everybody has so many questions on it. But I can assure you this: as soon as it becomes a safe and stable income approach, i.e. Ontario as a whole makes it a green light, then we can use the income.
Is it
Right?
going to disrupt a deal? I know I asked you this question before.
Yeah.
Is it going to disrupt a deal if the, realtor.ca advertises and is like, great income for Airbnb, but the buyer's intention they have no intention. It's their cottage or maybe their primary residence.
It's a great question, Courtney. A really, really great question. So the answer to it is this, okay? It makes the bank look a little deeper at things, okay? So if I brought a bank, one of my favorite banks, for example, First National. So if I brought First National and your application and I said, it's a cottage and the listing says great Airbnb potential, the lender's going to look at it and they're going to say, okay, Courtney and her husband own one property, no rental properties, no like side businesses, no other, creativity or entrepreneurship. Yeah, that's no problem. They probably won't Airbnb it. Now, if I brought Peggy's application to the same lender and she owns her primary residence and 6 rental properties, including one in Friday Harbor, and her tax returns show rental income, but I say, don't worry about it. She's not going to Airbnb it. I think I'll have a more difficult time.
Yes, she will. I'm gonna tell you.
But just for people to look out for, like when they're starting their search or whichever, they can, have that flag in their mind to think if they do see something that might be flagged, to call you and ask questions about that property.
Absolutely. And your team is incredible with this. I get calls all the time. And when I answer the phone, like I'm on speakerphone, you can tell already. And they're like, hey, Nick, I'm standing out here in Severn, and you can hear the wind blowing. And I'm like, okay, tell me the address. I look it up and I'm like, okay, there's running water. Yes. There's a septic system. Yes. Okay. Yeah. But there's an old outhouse on here. I'm like, let me take a look. Okay. It has a septic and the outhouse is, non-functional. That's very common, I think, these days. you know, it doesn't have a foundation, no problem. It's highly marketable. Yes, the roof is in good condition. Like we look at all those things. And if I read through the whole thing and it says, you know, great possible Airbnb potential, I'll say, Joanne, tell me about your buyers. And she'll say, Nick, vanilla, like easy breezy, you know, 6-year-old couple, own their primary residence, has a small mortgage. They're just looking to buy like a, you know, a family getaway sort of thing. I'm like, great. Or if I say, hey, Courtney, tell me about your clients. Well, they're kind of professional landlords. They own 15 properties, but I swear they won't rent it on Airbnb sort of thing. We prep the client that there could be a little more work. And especially going back to my first slide where, you know, we were saying that people, a lot of buyers, you know, over the course of the last year didn't have conditions. You know, they didn't have a financing condition. They didn't have an appraisal condition. They went in firm, and then we learned about the issues after the fact. And I don't know, Joanne, maybe you can tell us, like, is that changing in the cottage market? Are people getting conditions in their offers for cottages now?
No.
Still not, eh? Yeah. Wow. Crazy.
But also
So
appraisals that have, you know, that you do have to be careful a little bit there.
Yeah. So we wanted, like Courtney, as you mentioned, we want to do all the pre-work, right? Like we want to get familiar with the client and familiar with the properties and the kind of properties that they can purchase early on, very early on. So let's show a couple examples, okay? These are all sold listings. So I like to do the good, bad, and the ugly. And this is no offense to anybody that may have purchased these homes or anything, but this is surely from a financing perspective only, okay? So this is from the mortgage guy to the viewers. These are the properties that are easily financeable and the properties that are going to cause you issues, okay? So it has nothing to do with the aesthetics when I say the good, the bad, the ugly. So this is the good. This was in Georgian Bay. I pulled this up. It was a sold listing from last year. It was $459,000. Joanne, I'm sure you're going to agree with me. If this property was still for sale at $459,000 today, I don't know, 100 offers, you know, 1,000 showings. But take a look at this, okay? This is boat access, good, clean, quality real estate. See this little silver stack up here? It has a wood stove. These lines running through the picture, those are hydro lines. We like to see that. There's electricity. There's a little hump in the backyard. I pull up the listing. This has a septic system. Okay, so flushable toilets, running water. You see this black line right here? That's the lake intake right there. It's pulling up from the lake and into the house. Non-drinkable water. Okay, it's because it's a cottage, so that's fine. And take a look. No basement, right? This is on piers. See these piers behind here? So these posts are the deck. These posts are the piers. So there's no foundation. This is boat access. It's not drinkable water. This would be a 10% down payment. This is like a cabin on an island. It is a perfect deal from a financing perspective. I could finance this any day of the week. Great financing, 10% down, okay? The bad. This is the cottage estate that Joanne and Courtney want to buy together. And Courtney wants this one and Joanne wants this one, but it's on one title. These are two cottages on one title, okay? This is very, very, very difficult, if not impossible to finance, okay? So multiple structures, remember, on one property is gonna cause challenges. Now, this is more what we're looking for. This, if this was two separate parcels, no problem. One parcel, this will absolutely cause issues, okay? Now, because we're talking about recreational property financing, you ready for it, Courtney? The good, the bad, and the
ugly.
Everybody, I mean, we get calls every single week from somebody who says, I want a hunt camp. So Joanne's husband wants to buy this, put his ATVs in it. Him and the boys are going to have some beers in here and hunt and bring back deer to here. It's on 100 acres and there's no water. And it's $100,000 in, I don't know, North Bay. That is impossible to finance. You can see the deferred maintenance on the property. The logs that hold up the front porch are on an angle. And there's some work to be done, obviously, right? And, you know, what banks are looking for is good, clean, marketable real estate. So acreage, you know, we can use the value of a house and 10 acres in a lot of circumstances, sometimes 5 acres. This listing in particular was over 100 acres. There's nothing inside. There was no running water, no flushable toilets, and no electricity. Okay, so this is a challenge. Good, clean real estate can be financed very, very easily with 5% down or 10% down, but not multiple structures and nothing with deferred maintenance, okay? All right, so you ready, Courtney?
I'm ready. Featured listings. I'm very excited to see these and see what you're going to say about them and cost.
Yeah. Okay, so this is awesome stuff. Okay, this one on the left is on an island. This one on the right has year-round access. Okay, so this is the one in Bracebridge. This is the one in Port Severn. So this is the one on an island. This is the one that's year-round. Now the one on the island is actually more expensive. Crazy, right?
Interesting. Is it alone on the island, or does it have other houses on?
It has other houses on the island, yeah. But location, right? And this is on bigger water, as Joanne mentioned. So the bigger the water, the higher the price, right? I learned that from Joanne. This is on a river. So people pay for the water, right? And this is on a river, and this is on Georgian Bay. So let's take a look at this, okay? So this is Go Home Lake. It's listed at $729,000. It's a 2 to 3 season I put in there because it's boat access, right? However, it has a septic, it has running water with lake intake and baseboard heat. And then I just sort of put some stuff in here from the MLS listing. If anybody has any questions on this property or anything like this, reach out to Peggy Hill's team, reach out to Joanne. They can give you all kinds of information on this. It's accessible by boat. It's a small little cottage. It's 2 bedrooms, a 3-piece bath. It's just under 1,000 square feet, has a fireplace, a lot of decking, and panoramic waterfront views, and a bunkie. So this cottage here is $729,000. Someone would put down 10%. There's CMHC fees that are added onto it. Remember I was saying in almost every circumstance, people are going to put down less than 20% in this, okay? So we go asking price minus down payment plus CMHC. There's the mortgage rate here, but here's the really important thing, okay? So the monthly payment is $2,700 and the taxes. So Joanne, we were talking about taxes before on cottages. So tell me all the good about taxes on cottages, right?
They're always so much lower.
Aren't they? So my taxes are ridiculous at my house. I hate them, but I look at the listings of cottages and they're always like $2,000 or $1,500 or $2,500. Joanne, is that still true? Like the big lakes, like the big popular ones in Muskoka, are taxes still that low, or do they get crazy when we get onto the good lakes?
Higher as on the bigger lakes, they're definitely higher for sure. So I would say probably, I'm going to give you an example, maybe something of 1,500 square feet year round. One of the big lakes might be, depends on the frontage too, but it might be somewhere around $6,000 or so. Like it can get up there, probably very similar to what we're seeing here in Barrie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Double.
Yeah, exactly. However, if you took that house and put it on the waterfront in Barrie, right?
Right.
I don't know, $15,000, $20,000.
No, 40.
Yeah, exactly.
Try 40, Nick.
40,000.
Because my taxes are almost $14,000 and I do not live on the water, my friend.
Oh man.
Wait, 14,000, Peg?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
For a year at your current personal residence?
Yes, ma'am.
What the?
Not on the water, in a little
I have a client I have coming up with a house on Kempenfelt Drive. She told me her taxes were 17,000 a year.
Yep.
Non-waterfront.
Well, it's Kempenfelt Drive, so it's non-waterfront facing, like if there's a road in between.
Yeah.
The water.
Wow.
And the walkway, the shoreline. So it's not cheap.
And honestly, the scary of the taxes is everybody knows how they calculate taxes. It's based on mill rate. And I don't know what they're going to do this next cycle, because all these homes that are selling, your regular subdivision home that's sold now for $1 million, what value are they going to put on that? Because depending on what value they put on that is what you're going to pay taxes on. My home isn't valued at $1 million and I'm paying almost $14,000 in taxes. So I don't know what they're going to do, but it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I just had a client who bought a cottage last summer on an island, 300 and change, $350,000 or $380,000. And they just got a notice from MPAC that they want in to do their assessment. So we all know what that means, right?
Trouble.
Taxes are going up. No question, taxes are going up, right? So again, this one is accessible by boat, $729. Taxes were just over $2,000 on this property.
Wow.
Total payment, $2,900, including taxes. Now, what I see most cottage buyers do is because the taxes are so darn low, they just pay the taxes once per year or twice per year.
Yep.
And then you're just committed to this mortgage payment right here, this $2,700. So because this is an insured mortgage with 10% down, I used a variable rate at today's interest rates, okay? Variable rate, 1.45%. Crazy, right? 1.45% on a cottage. On a cottage.
That's what the variable rate is on a cottage?
1.45%.
That's
Wow.
incredible.
That's
Isn't
really
that awesome? So, boat access, lake intake water, baseboard heat on an island, 1.45% with 10% down. It is just awesome.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
The other thing I was going to say about this, Go Home Lake is
Yeah.
a great little lake. I love Go Home Lake. It's super cute and it's still really close and like enough to the city. It's not super far out, but if your mortgage payment per month is $3,000, you could easily rent this cottage for $3,000 a week.
There's so much opportunity in this
Like,
in this
And
cottage.
it's not included in your like you're not gonna maybe rent it out or like include that at all. But in terms of like
Maybe you do that after closing, right?
closing.
Yeah.
Don't tell him anything, Courtney.
Right.
No, not the mortgage guy, exactly.
Oh, not him. Just kidding.
So this one's in Bracebridge. This is the $599. So again, this one's $729. This one's $599.
Wow.
Okay. 4-season, septic, running water. Oops, that's a mistake. It is not lake intake. It's drinkable water. Okay. Or maybe it's lake intake, but with drinkable water. It's year round, waterfront bungalow, double lot, 10 minutes to town. Right. So this is a year-round home for $599 with a Bracebridge address, which Joanne, I'm sure you're going to tell us is incredible, right? Yeah.
Courtney's gonna sell me this house, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's listed for $599. I'm almost certain they are holding offers. Just saying.
Maybe. What do you think, Joanne?
I think maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Courtney,
Beautiful little property, $599, 4-season. I mean, you could go up and work from there today, right? Actually, look at this. I've included that. Has fiber optic internet.
come on.
It's
Beautiful.
Bracebridge. Bracebridge is a barrier.
It's a hub. It's a hub.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So $599. I put 5% down. It's actually minimum down payment because there's a tiered down payment when you get over 500,000. But just for presentation purposes, the down payment is just under $35,000. We add on that insurance fee. You have a mortgage of $587. The monthly mortgage payment is $2,300. You pay the taxes once a year or twice a year. But if you wanted to pay it monthly, it's $2,500 for this house.
Wow.
$2,500 a month for this house right here. Isn't that fabulous?
Amazing.
Again, 1.45% mortgage rate, like just phenomenal, just phenomenal. So again, the good to know here, guys, like the reminders that we want to leave everybody with: islands, no problem. Remote locations, no problem. The interest rates, as we just mentioned, right? 1.45%. Lake intake is no problem at all. And 2- and 3-season cottages are no problem, just like what we just went through on this beautiful house right here. So these are the good to knows. And again, just remember, running water, septic, flushable toilets, those are what you want to look out for, okay?
And can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So if I wanted to buy this and I have my primary residence, is it going to be an issue? Like, can I just buy a second property?
Yeah, absolutely you can. So these programs
5%
are
down.
5% down is the house on a lake, 10% down is the cottage on an island. It's really, really, really like, remember I was saying at the beginning of this, like the myth busting.
Yeah.
This is the awesome stuff. Like, look at this, 10% down on this property, You know, what we see a lot of the time, and Joanne, I know you and I have talked about this a bunch of times, but we see friends come together on these sort of things, right? Because to split $2,700 a month, and you know, Peggy, you get two tax bills, right? Like you get your first one and your second one, your interim and your final. So you pay one, I pay the other, and we're split C's on this $2,700. That is just a perfect little deal, because everybody, like all four of us will agree, a cottage would be really great. A cottage with 50% of the work would be even better, right? Like, you know,
But Nick, I can't buy an investment property and only put 5% down on it, but yet
Nope.
I can buy a cottage and put 5% down on it.
with the premise that you're not going to rent it out, right? That's one of the keys for sure. So, you know, 5% down is the house on a lake, 10% down is a cottage on an island, right? And these programs exist, and they are widely available, and people are taking advantage of them every single day. I love these programs more when your team used to bring me cottages on an island on Go Home Lake that were $300,000, but those don't exist anymore. And the price of cottages are just going to go up and up and up and up. So no better time than the present, of course, right?
Awesome.
Got it. Very cool. Do we have any questions on Facebook from our tech lady extraordinaire in the background? I haven't seen any come through. So I think we're good. Well, that's it for cottage financing, recreational properties information session. As always, please reach out to us. You can reach Joanne at peggyhill.com. You can reach Nick. I forget your email off the top of my head. Nick at mortgagewealth.ca.
Thank you. Or you can just go to the Trusted Partners website, page of your website as well.
Always good. So either way, reach out to us. We're happy if you want to buy a cottage, if you want to buy a cottage with friends, if you want to buy me a cottage, you know, let me know. We'll just hang out and it'll be great. Thanks everyone.
You're buying me a cottage, Court.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll go in on it. One of those 2.2 mils over on Rosso. What do you think, guys?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Funny.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Thanks
guys
for your
so
time,
much.
guys.
Have
Hope you have a great night.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Courtney.
Thanks, Courtney. Thanks, Joanne.